And I want to add on to your point, Mo, for different products and services that are used. Box is a great one for file storage, but another one, kind of the gold standard that music supervisors are using, is Disco. And Disco allows you to save and upload multiple versions of a file, so an MP3, a WAV, and your AIF files. Have all of your stems, you can playlist, and it's kind of acting as like an online iTunes.
Hmm.
So you can enter your publishing information, your IPI, your contact information, lyrics, the genres. You can tag it with different genres and moods and feels and all that stuff. And then music supervisors can actually save that stuff to their own library and then search it. Hello and welcome. This is episode 3 of the Vana Room.
The Vana room.
And unfortunately, we're missing Rob today. He had something to take care of. So it's just going to be Monique and I handling the topic of sync licensing, which is kind of the basics. We're going to get into the basics, get you set up for more deeper conversations that we're planning down the road. But you'll be able to use this one as a really solid reference and starting point for everything sync licensing.
Yeah, so
So
this will be like our sync licensing 101 discussion.
yes, because I think there's a lot to go under, and there's a lot of different spider webs we could go off into with sync licensing, but we're just going to break it down really simply for you.
Hmm.
So to kind of get things started, let's discuss what is sync licensing. So Monique, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So when we talk about sync licensing, what we're referring to is combining music with a visual medium. So that's film, TV shows, TV commercials, video games, anything where there's a visual medium and music is being attached to it. So it's sync because you're putting them together, you're syncing these things together. And so the sync by itself is referring to the lyrics and the composition being attached to a visual medium. When we say master sync, we're referring to the actual recording as well being attached to um, a particular visual medium. So the difference would basically be a scene in a movie where the character is in the shower singing a song, but there's no the actual recording is not being played, that would just be a sync license. But if it's a scene in the movie where the actual recording is playing, then that's what we call the master sync. So and we'll get into more detail about, what actually has to be negotiated and that sort of thing, or what rights and which copyrights apply. But in short, that's what we're talking about.
hmm So there's this is a really good opportunity for musicians to get into because there can be potentially a lot of money involved, which is
Oh
great.
yeah.
So you can reinvest that money into your career and then continue expanding. It's also a really good avenue for exposure, getting placed on a
Hmm.
TV show. Like you look at like The Office or these massive TV shows that are happening now. Or Office, I guess, was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But you see a lot of TV shows that are really taking off nowadays and movies. And one placement in those movies can really grow an artist's career. For example, a
Absolutely.
Euphoria would be a really good example, and Jen
Hmm.
Malone is the music supervisor for Euphoria.
Hmm.
So we look at one placement for that is you get your money, and then on the back end, you also are getting a lot of fans because people are shazamming that and they're finding your music because of that placement.
And a
Um,
lot of those shows are also doing playlists. So
yes,
it also is an opportunity to increase your streams. So now that people have found you on these different shows, now they're actually going to streaming sites to stream or download and purchase the music. So it is definitely a fantastic opportunity for exposure
yes.
and
So
revenue.
yes, and revenue. So it's aside from the monetization avenues, and it's a whole other topic with sync monetization and all the royalties and sync fees and all that stuff. Who is kind of at the helm of these sync licenses? Like, where would I want to start?
So, I mean, you have two sides. If we're talking about the client that actually needs the music, we're talking about a music supervisor that is working directly on the film or the TV show or whatever. So they are looking at the scene and they're going, this scene needs music that's really high energy, and we need something with a lot of guitars, or we need a song that has lyrics that talks about this. So they create what's called a brief, and the brief details some of the information from the scene, and they will send that brief out to music publishers. And they do have another system. It's mostly done via email,
Mhm.
but the music supervisor has various people that they know that they're in touch with, and so they'll send out what's called a brief, and it'll say, hey, we're looking for a love song, um, for such and such TV show or such and such movie. And they'll tell you if they need just an instrumental or if they need something with actual lyrics and what they would like for the lyrics to address. And then the publishers, will that are managing rights to the songs, will go through their catalog of music, and everything is very detailed in their system about every single song that they have, down to beats per minute, to the instrumentation, to the lyrics, everything, the theme of the song, the mood of the song, if it's got a female singing or a male singing, if it's a duet, whatever. And then they will go through their system and reference the songs that they feel best match what that brief is looking for, and send that to the music supervisor. And then the music supervisor will make a determination on what they want to use for their project.
Yes, touched on a lot of really good points. Another thing is a direct avenue is maybe not going directly to music supervisors, but there's also music libraries. So if the music supervisor doesn't have an exact track that they're looking for in a specific artist, or they don't have anything to mind, they'll go to a few music libraries that they pay for, and a lot of times these are subscriptions or whatever, and they have a whole library of music with artists in there as well, and they can pick and pull from those as well. And then,
Mm.
you obviously get royalties for those
And
tracks.
it also is going to depend on their budget too. So
Yes.
those libraries come in really handy if it's a scene where the actors are in a nightclub and they just need random music for the background. They don't want to spend money licensing, Jay-Z or somebody that's going to cost a fortune. So
Yeah.
they'll just go to the library that they're already paying for, put some generic music in the background because the characters are talking over it anyway. So, but I do want to say this too. I mentioned playlists that come out and people stream, but I'll tell you what else is extremely successful with getting your music into a visual medium, and that's the soundtrack for the film or the TV
Mm.
show. So, Dirty Dancing is a great example. When the first Dirty Dancing movie, the original Dirty Dancing, came out forever ago, um, the music was fantastic. And the fan base was like, hold on, where's this song? Where's that song? So they actually had to release a whole nother soundtrack of music that was really like little songs that were in the background, but people heard them and they wanted the whole song. So there were two
Mm.
soundtracks that came out for Dirty Dancing. Quentin Tarantino is another one that he has a huge private collection of music, but
Mm.
he's really big on music in his films as well. And if you
Yeah.
look at Kill Bill had some fantastic music in it, and it even broke. Like you said, it was great exposure for the 5, 6, 7, 8s out of Japan, and
Mm.
then they ended up getting sync licensing deals here in the U.S. for a Vonage commercial, and I believe it was a Chevy commercial as well.
Mm.
So music soundtracks to films, next level, because sometimes the soundtrack does better than the movie.
Yeah.
There was a movie called Garden State that didn't do very well in the theaters. I love the movie personally, but their soundtrack for the film won a Grammy, but the movie itself did not do very well. So,
Yeah.
you know, There's just so many opportunities. I love listening to music and film, so I'm very biased when it comes to this particular subject.
Same. I'm always listening to even like TV shows where they're throwing music in every 30 seconds, 20
Yeah,
seconds. There's always really cool stuff.
yeah.
I love the show, particularly the show Catfish on MTV. They always have really good upcoming, I mean, MTV is music TV, but they always have really good independent upcoming artists. So I discover a lot of music through them actually, and they have a very niche sound. And you'll as you're listening and watching movies, take note of that as well. What kind of sound is in each movie, and how is it kind of adding to the story
Hmm.
and the characters?
And MTV launched their, I think it's called e-music, where
Mm,
they were specifically looking for unsigned artists to work with, and they've
wow.
actually managed to break a lot of artists into the mainstream through that. If I'm not mistaken, it's a partnership with another major, but the point
Mm,
was to find unsigned talent. So they were only looking for artists that were not signed to major labels, but yeah, there's some great music there. That was kind of the evolution of MTV with their reality shows. Is that
mhm,
everybody was like, "Hey, what happened to MTV? You guys aren't showing music videos anymore." But what they did was, is they evolved. They created new programming. They were still incorporating music. It was just music that we hadn't heard, so it was still a
mhm.
way to break in, or break us into new artists. So it was
Yeah.
still pretty creative. I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah, and a lot of times the music supervisors that are on these shows aren't looking for artists like Lady Gaga, Jay-Z,
Right.
Beyonce. They don't need any more exposure. They can send a tweet and go viral.
Mhm.
Whereas an underground up and coming artist who's trying to break out of Chicago or Miami needs that exposure and will find that exposure for their resume to be much more helpful than placing a Lady Gaga. Plus, it's going to be much cheaper than placing somebody like Beyonce or Jay Z because they're obviously going to ask for a
Mhm.
much
I
larger
mean,
sync
that's what
fee.
happened with Lizzo. I forgot the TV show. It was an HBO show, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh
She had
yeah.
already gained an audience underground, so to speak. But as soon as I think it was Truth Hurts was played in a scene in a TV show, I mean, she skyrocketed after that. So
Yep.
yeah, and like I said, and it also comes down to their budget. What is the budget for the music? And it's hard to say right now with the way things are due to the pandemic, what their budgets are looking like. But music is so important to film and TV. And you have some movies like Baby Driver, where the whole
Hmm.
movie focused around the music. So they had already
Hmm.
picked the music, and they built the film around the music that they had picked. So music is
Yes.
essential. It helps set the mood. It helps you, it can add to the suspense of the film. It can add to the
Hmm.
excitement of the film, the romance of the film. So
Yep.
never underestimate what music can contribute to a visual medium. And I think, moving on with our conversation, I think it's important to talk about what musicians need to have prepared,
Yes.
independent musicians, because if you're working with a major label, their publishing company is kind of already preparing this stuff. But if
Yep.
you're an independent, you got to get yourself organized. Rob used that word a lot in the initial podcast that we did. So, organization is so crucial to your forward movement in this industry. So, let's talk about what the artists, these
Hmm.
independent artists who hopefully own all the rights to their work, because that's important.
Let's for the
um,
sake of argument to keep things simple. Let's say for any example we use, any artist is going to be one stop owning everything.
okay, that's fair. We can do
Yes.
that.
That's common.
Well, I mean, if there's collaborations, it can be, a bit of a
That's
challenge. If you
yeah.
bought a beat from somebody, you don't really own that. So, what rights do you have, and are you even allowed to license it out? But we can talk about that when we talk about copyrights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but uh, So, as far as um, the one stop, So, one more time, for those who may have missed an earlier podcast, when we say one stop, we mean you own everything. You own the composition in the lyrics, and you own the recording as well,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So, if this is you, then we talked about metadata and the importance of metadata. So it's even more crucial here when we talk about the sync. So, what additional metadata do you need for the sync? I've already mentioned you should have your lyrics, you should have your BPM, you should have the key. What key is the song in? Um, what is the theme of the song? What is the mood of the song? What instrumentation um, do you have? So, is it violins? Is it piano? Is it guitar? Is it a lot of drums? Those are some of the key things that you're going to need to have with regard to the metadata for the song.
Yeah, and I mean, it also going a little bit deeper is who is your PRO?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you affiliated with?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, who's the publisher?
Mm-hmm.
And typically, if you're an artist, there's you own your own publishing company, and then the publishing, and then you own as a songwriter, you own the songwriting share. So, and then what's your IPI number? What's the genre of the track? The more metadata and information that you can have and embed and provide to a music supervisor or whoever is reaching out, the better. And leaving notes on who to contact. So when you're pitching, who do you have? Who owns everything? Leave your
Mm-hmm.
email, leave a phone number so they can call you and clear it immediately.
Right. Because the last digging they have to do, music supervisors are often working on a deadline, so what they don't have time to
Yes.
do is chase down information. So yeah, the contact information in the metadata is so crucial. And then the other thing are the various stems that should be available. Lennon, if you want to talk about that.
Yes. So when you're done with your song and you're ready to start pitching, you should have the stems. So what is a stem? The stems is going to be like the vocals. Then you're going to have the drums and percussion, and then you're going to have any synths, and then you're going to have the bass, and you're going to have every different kind of instrumentation group, so to speak, grouped up and use those because there might be an instance where the music supervisor wants to use just the bass line of that,
Hmm.
or they want to use the percussion and the bass, or they want the whole instrumental and no vocals. So they need to have that flexibility when it comes to the actual audio files and what they're using.
Hmm. I do want to emphasize this: if you are privy to a brief, do not improvise anything. If they ask for an MP3 file, you give them an MP3 file. Do
Yep.
not give them what they didn't ask for. They are very particular about what they've requested and how they've requested it. Um,
Hmm.
it's also important if you have an opportunity to reach out to a music supervisor that you are um, very straightforward. Respond to the brief with, this is who I am. Here, have a link to your social media. So let me add this to something that may assist you. It's also helpful to them if you are an artist with a great story, because the story behind the music also helps sell the music being used in the film. So I would recommend that you guys have your one sheet prepared, and we can talk about that in another podcast too. But in short, the one sheet is just like your brief description about who you are as an artist, what your backstory is, basically like the bio of the band or the artist, and
Hmm.
then links to your social media. Make sure your links work. Don't have broken links. So test out your documents before you send them. But a band with a good story or an artist with a good story is also very helpful to their selection of who they're going to pick. Or, if it comes down to three artists and they're like, all right, we like all three of these songs, we really could use any one of these. Which one is going to help us get the most exposure for our program, or what have you? So,
Hmm.
um, Yeah, have your one sheet and your bio information ready to go.
Yep. Keep in mind that the less back and forth that a music supervisor has to go, the better. I
Mhm.
have a friend who he had a pitch a few weeks ago or a month ago, and it was for a show in on HBO or something like that. And the music supervisor was in New York, so they were 3 hours ahead.
Mm.
She's like, I need something that sounds like this in 6 hours. Do you have anything? And this, I mean, this was a six-figure deal potentially on the line, and so they tried to drum something up, and unfortunately, nothing came through. They weren't able to get
Mhm.
something, but that's all right. They moved on. But that just goes to show how quickly these people work. She
Yeah.
sent out, she needed something in 6 hours to pitch by 9 a.m.
Mm.
Uh, her time. So if you have something and you send her a WAV file and she's asking for stems, but your stems are with your mastering engineer and you don't know, you can't get a hold of your friend because if they collaborated with you, you can't get a hold of them. If they're, that's, they're going to move on. And that's a
Yep.
lost opportunity.
Yep. 100%. That organization is key. So have
Yes.
everything easily accessible, so you can just grab it and send it. Um,
Yes.
there's a website that's recommended called box.com that is uh, easy to manage with large files. So box.com is one that, not Dropbox, not your Google Drive. Um, so check out box.com. That's the one that has been recommended um, by a music supervisor that I spoke to,
Mm,
that they would like to use. And to your point, Lennon, it goes back to organization. You should have your files organized in some way that if somebody asks you for a song that had driving guitars, if that's the kind of music you make, then you should be able to
mm.
know exactly where those files are. Um,
Yes.
so your own file organization is going to be crucial, um, to you being able to locate your tracks quickly for them to access.
hmm And I want to add on to your point, Mo, for different products and services that are used. Box is a great one for file storage, but another one, kind of the gold standard that music supervisors are using, is Disco. And Disco allows you to save and upload multiple versions of a file, so an MP3, a WAV, and your AIF files. Have all of your stems, you can playlist, and it's kind of acting as like an online iTunes.
Hmm.
So you can enter your publishing information, your IPI, your contact information, lyrics, the genres. You can tag it with different genres and moods and feels and all that stuff. And then music supervisors can actually save that stuff to their own library and then search it. So we'll definitely link that in the show notes below. But Disco is definitely one of the gold standards
And
I've
they are
listened to.
using Disco on their end
Yes,
to catalog all of their music for the artists that they, well, the
yes,
publishers are using it. Um, Publishers are using Disco to um, organize all the catalog content
yes,
that they have. And
absolutely.
it's usually, if anybody's interested in another, I mean, if you're not an artist and you're just looking to get into the music industry, the position you want to look for is a music coordinator. The music coordinator is the person working with the supervisor, but the coordinator is the one keeping track of all the information. It's the same in person on set with the music supervisor, so they're keeping track of how much of the song was used in the scene, where it was used in the scene, because then they have to report that to the PROs, which brings me
Mhm.
to the monetization side of it. You can charge a fee up front for use of your song. So if somebody from HBO says, hey, we want to use your song, well, you should have some questions.
Yes.
How much of the song do they want to use? How long do they need the rights? Where is it going to be used? All that kind of stuff. So don't just throw a number out. You need to ask questions. This is a negotiation at this point.
Mhm.
And so, what a lot of people don't realize is not only are you negotiating an upfront fee, but once that music gets used into that program, you're also going to get a check from ASCAP or BMI, whoever you belong to, because that music is being publicly performed. So there is a royalty that you will also receive. And then if it gets
Yes.
added to a soundtrack that gets sold, now you're going to get a mechanical.
Yep.
So, and we can, as we continue to upload these episodes, we'll touch on these different types of revenue streams that you have access to as a content creator.
hmm And as we progress through the episodes, we're going to have experts who are far, far above and beyond what Mo and I ever are, will be for this, and working very deeply within this every day of the year. So they have a lot more information on this stuff, and will be willing to share that with you and sharing all that information with you. Um, so let's go back just a little bit. Where do we find these? We've talked about music supervisors, we've talked about how much I can make, we've talked about the TV shows, we've talked about everything. Where do we find music supervisors? How do we get in touch with these people?
So it can be tricky. You can find out who they are pretty easily if it's a show that's already released. You can use IMDb as a source. It's probably one of the best sources. And
Mhm.
one of the things you should recognize is a lot of times, particularly if it's a TV show, they may have a different music supervisor per episode, per
Yes.
season. So if you're looking at who's doing the music, you might want to do a little bit of research and find out, okay, which episode had the kind of music that you produce, and see who that music supervisor was. So you're going to need to know like what season it was or what episode did they do, or
Mhm.
what that episode was that you watched or saw or whatever, and determine who it is. So IMDb is a great resource, and all you have to do is go to imdb.com, find the movie where you heard the music that you think fits what you create, and then click on cast and crew. And then what you can do is Command F and just do a search for the music. Just type the word music, hit enter anywhere like music supervisor, music coordinator, all that will pop up. You can also type in audio and see if it's under audio. But so that's one way to find out who they are. There is a directory out there, but you got to pay for it.
Mm.
There is one online. It gets updated, but again, it's really broad, and you still should narrow down who you're looking for. Don't just send your music to every single supervisor or music supervisor, because not every single music supervisor is looking for your style of music.
Mhm.
It would also be to your benefit, um, you know, and this is something Jamvana will be looking into offering in the near future, which is sync opportunities through Jamvana as well. But there are sync licensing companies out there that will work for you. But music supervisors, sometimes they're on the internet, just like we are listening to music. So I come from a broadcasting background, as you know, and I was on the radio one day, and the request line rang, and I answered it, and the lady said, "Hi, my name is so and so from Pink Sneakers Productions, which is a production company that worked with through Universal on some of the Nickelodeon reality shows." And she said, "I'm the music supervisor for Pink Sneakers. Can you tell me the name of the song that you just played? Can you tell me who the artist is and the name of this?" So sometimes they're just listening to the radio,
Mhm.
and they'll hear a song and they'll be like, "That would be great for whatever it is that I'm working on." And so I think the biggest thing is making sure your music is available. Make sure
Mhm.
your music is being distributed. So if you're not already using Jamvana or some other distributor, you need to get on it.
Mhm.
They're not going to find you if you're not out there.
Mhm.
So make yourself visible.
Yep, because once your song is available to them, they can easily stream it and find it.
Hmm.
And then if your song gets placed in that show and it airs in 6 months to a year, your fans and whoever is finding that song will be able to save it to their playlist,
Hmm.
then adding up to your streaming royalties as well as your sync royalties.
And they also look forward to you promoting the fact that your song is going to be in one of their TV shows on your social media as well, because now
Absolutely.
you're driving more people to the show.
Absolutely.
And again, in some instances, and this is why it's so important to Again, something else that we're going to talk about is branding and that sort of thing. But your brand is really crucial because depending on what your band or you as an artist, what your brand is, you could end up in the film. I mean,
Yep.
look at Yellowstone. They have an actor in the show who is actually a country music singer, and they're using his music as part of the soundtrack as well.
Wow.
So, I mean, this could open up all sorts of doors. And not to switch gears, but I forgot to mention this earlier. I think it's important to recognize that um, Hulu, Amazon, HBO, I feel like I'm leaving Paramount, all these streaming networks are producing their own original content.
Apple.
So it's important to do your research and look up who are the production companies creating the show that is going to these platforms.
Mm.
Understand? Like everybody's like, oh, that's an HBO show. That's a Paramount show. No, no, no. That is the platform. Somebody else is producing that show. These networks are putting up money to get the show on their platform.
Mm-hmm.
So if the best thing to do is do a little digging. There's a website called now this one's for movies, so I don't know. I need to look and see if it actually gives anything for these various platforms. But there's a website called Movie Insider, and Movie
Mm.
Insider will tell you what films are in pre-production, post-production, um, that are in production as we speak, and it'll tell you what studio is doing the film. So that that's something else. Oh, and I will also say this, since you're asking like where to go, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking like major networks, major TV studios, right? But let's crawl before we can walk, right? So
Yes.
here's another place that you can start: independent film festivals.
Yes.
Go to independent film festivals, find independent filmmaker organizations, and connect with the filmmakers and turn them on to your music. Make sure your social media is straight, make sure your website is straight, make sure your music is being distributed, and let them check you out. And then the next film that they work on, you can potentially have your music. Now, keep in mind, independent filmmakers don't have big budgets. However, if they made a good film, that film can get picked up by a major studio and it's next level.
Yep.
I was at Sundance when Hustle and Flow got picked up, and
Ah.
that was a huge deal. And there
Yeah.
was great music, and 3 6 Mafia, who was already out, but 3 6 Mafia had a hit
Yep.
out of that movie. But it was crazy. Sundance was going nuts over
Yeah.
this film, and again, this is a great opportunity for exposure. So film festivals are another great place to be
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
There's a lot of really good independent films that have come
Oh
out of film
yeah,
festivals, and there's a lot of really good film festivals around the country, around the world.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Sundance is one of the premier ones, and that's
Mm-hmm.
in Florida, right?
Nope, Sundance is in Utah, Park City, Utah.
Utah.
Mhm.
Well, what was the one in Florida?
I mean, we have some here too. I don't know that we have a massive one, but we have an independent one here. I don't
Okay.
know the organization that runs it, but there's
Hmm.
there's some here.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I'll have to look into my film festivals.
Yes, check them out. I'm telling you, it's you know what? It's such an untapped networking opportunity that people in music just don't think about. And I'll tell you another one is gaming conferences. So music is in video
Yeah,
games too. They put out soundtracks for video games.
they do.
So gaming conferences is another one. There's game jams. Again, there's no money involved, but it's a chance for exposure. It's a chance to learn how to work with game developers and producers on what they're looking for music for their game. But video games are huge. That industry is. I mean, for a while it was surpassing movies.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then the pandemic hit and everybody had to watch movies on a streaming site. But Don't underestimate the power of a video game, because guess what happens with video games? They become movies.
Yeah.
Look at Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you are missing out on the big picture.
Mhm.
Books, even look at books that have become audiobooks. So Harry Potter. Yeah, okay. So you went from a book, somebody had to compose the theme music. Now look at it. It's everywhere. It's in the amusement parks,
Yeah.
and that's money.
Yeah.
We had traveling orchestras playing the music from Harry Potter. So do not underestimate. So look at audiobooks. Look at people who are putting books, out in in that space, because the music you create might be an opportunity to become a theme song for something that could potentially hit the next level.
Yeah.
So the opportunities are endless. They
Mhm.
really are. And the ability to monetize from these different little nuggets is insane.
Mhm.
You get a check from here and a check from there. It's a beautiful life.
It is. It is a beautiful life when you have multiple streams of income. That's the best way to
That's
go.
the way to do it.
And, for musicians, it's always best to have that kind of money coming in, and then you can take that money and invest it in new gear, a new tour bus, your next album, marketing,
Merch.
merch. There's all kinds of opportunities that come about when you have a little bit
Hmm.
of disposable income and that exposure. People will start calling you. You won't need to do the reach out. They'll start calling you to come play at their venue or open for this artist or this festival or whatever. Um, so another I want to point out too, before we move on, another resource that is really valuable that I've used personally quite a bit is a site called Tunefind, Tunefind. And what you can do is you search the movie in there or the show, and it pops up with every song that is in that episode or movie, and then at what time and what the scene was. And I believe it's pretty much kind of like Wikipedia, where it's pretty much self edited and people can submit and you can link the Apple Music and Spotify tracks right to that song. And sometimes it also tells you who the music supervisor is or what the company is on the side as well. So that's a really great resource as well. If you're not sure, but you found the song and you're like, I really like that song. My song fits that style. Let me find out who the music supervisor is for that song. TuneFind is another great resource.
There's one similar for TV commercials too. I think it's
Mm,
called iSpot. I'll double check that and I'll give it to you
I
to put in the the
show notes.
details of the episode.
Yeah.
But I think it's called iSpot, and that one will also tell you the name of the song, who the artist is, and then it'll tell you what ad agency um, placed the song in the ad. And so going back to what we were talking about, so we already mentioned film and TV. Then we talked about video games. Now let's talk about commercials. Very much like film and TV, ad agencies are also looking for some sort of connection between your song and what the product is or the service is that's being offered. So, for example, that Applebee's commercial that drove everybody crazy, I forgot the artist's name, but the song was specifically about going to Applebee's and having this upscale night for the country folks. And so they licensed that song for the Applebee's commercial until they wore us crazy with it. Um, Skippy licensed Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars because there's a line in the song that says something to the effect of smoother than a fresh jar of Skippy or something like that.
Mm,
So because he even mentioned Skippy in the song, Skippy was like, "Oh, this is a great song, and they mention our product. Let's put it in our commercial." So, but a caveat to that is this: just because you mention a product in your song does not guarantee that the brand is going to approve your
yes.
use of their product in your song, or B, like the song at all.
Yeah.
So you could be setting yourself up for some legal action depending on how the brand is used in your song. So in my opinion, if you're going to mention a brand in your song, keep it positive.
Mm-hmm.
Don't disparage the brand in any way, um,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of stay off their radar. And they might just be like, you know what, that's cool. maybe we can use that for a commercial later on, or work with that band depending on the name of your band or whatever.
Mhm.
The other thing, well, did you want to add to that? Because there is something else that we need to bring up that made me think about it. Did you
No.
did you want to add anything to the
No.
commercials,
No,
using
that's
commercials?
that's good.
Okay, so that brings me to this point, and this is across the board, but that last little bit made me think of this is when you start negotiating, and we can talk about this in more detail when we get our supervisor friends on, and so I'm not going to go into super detail, but I will say this: sometimes the brand wants to use the lyrics and the composition, but not your actual recording. And as part of that, they may want to actually change the lyrics to fit what it is that the product is selling in the commercial. So, for example, there was a commercial for those Crustables, the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but they have no crust on them.
Yep. Yep.
They actually used Bootylicious for
Mm.
that commercial. However, they did not use the word Bootylicious in the commercial. They changed it to jelly. I don't think you're ready for all this jelly. And so now you have to negotiate with them changing your lyrics because they're going to have to re record it for their commercial. So moving forward, when we do get an opportunity to come on with our guests from the sync side of things, I want to make sure we uh, give you guys some understanding of the rights that you need to negotiate when people approach you to use your work in a film, a TV show, a commercial, or a video game. So we're going to break this conversation up. We're not going to do it all now, but I just want to put it out there that this is a great opportunity, but there's other aspects that we have to talk about here that are super important. And understanding what rights you have in your work and what to negotiate when you have this opportunity is crucial. But
Mhm.
we'll do that in another episode. But I do want to just kind of plant that seed because I know
Mhm.
somebody's going, well, what do we ask for? What question? Because I did mention, you got to ask questions. Well, what
Yeah.
questions do we ask? So we'll get to that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's like, well, this negotiating stuff is scary. I've never negotiated anything in my life, and I'm just a musician. I just want to make music.
Right.
But then when the business side comes in, obviously there's attorneys and stuff that will be able to help you negotiate the deal before you
Hmm.
put pen to paper. Um, and we'll definitely have attorneys on to answer all these questions as well, what to look for. But yeah, this episode is just meant to be 101, just giving you an entry level kind of dipping your toes into what's possible with sync licensing.
And give you an opportunity to get your music organized. So this is an
Yep.
opportunity. Now that we've talked about what you should have, this is your opportunity to go either add disco to your budget, find out how much the program costs, and then get it. Or you can create your own database using Google, Microsoft 365, whatever you have on your computer if you don't have it in your budget right now to get these software programs. But at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to how prepared you are when the opportunity presents itself. And that's what we want to do with, our episodes in the Vana room is educate you all and also get you guys organized for when that opportunity presents itself.
Hmm. Absolutely. We want you to be able to just be, if a music supervisor hits you up at 3 a.m., you can answer the email from your bed and say, yep,
Mm,
here's everything you need
yep.
in 30 seconds. And,
No,
you
they'll
get a
love you.
5 6 figure paycheck coming through in a few months.
Hmm. Great
So,
opportunities.
yes, absolutely. So, we've covered a lot of organization, what music supervisors are, the monetization opportunities, what sync is, where the opportunities lie, like video games, TV shows, movies, commercials, trailers, advertisements. We talked about the instrumentals, the different stems. And then we talked about some tools that you can use to find music supervisors and also prepare and get your music organized, like Disco, Google Spreadsheets, Microsoft 365, whatever it is that you have.
Hmm.
Um, so Before we wrap things up, Mo, is there anything else that you want to add, or is there anything else we should touch on before we kind of tie the bow?
I think we did good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot to unwrap, and I think,
Yeah.
if somebody is new to this space, I think breaking it up into little chunks is best. So we'll give you guys time to absorb what we dropped on you today,
Hmm.
and then when we come back, we'll drop some more on you that you can just add to this whole process. But right now, I think, because I definitely want to make sure we talk about the rights, what to negotiate, what to ask, the potential client. But I think we'll do that in another episode. So yeah, I
Yes.
think we did good today.
I think we did as well. So, with that, thank you for joining us on this week's episode of the Vana Room. Stay tuned. Feel free to use this, bookmark this episode, and reference it as many times as you need. The links that we mentioned will be in the show notes below. But yeah, we will see you next time on the Vana Room.
Bye bye.